I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we are gonna do some ice dyeing. I am really excited about this because I got some fiber reactive dyes from Dharma Trading Company that are supposed to break. They're supposed to break brilliantly. They were designed to break. And so we're gonna do some ice dyeing on some sock blanks today to see what kind of patterns we can get. Eventually, I'll play around with these on like a cotton t-shirt or something, but the ChemKnits patrons voted to see this on a wool-based yarn first. Now, one perk of fiber reactive dyes is that you can use them like acid dyes with acid, or you can use them with soda ash to dye cotton like a tie-dye fiber reactive dye. So you have both of those options. And today we're going to treat these as acid dyes. Now the main yarn we're going to be dyeing today is 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon. Let's go ahead and pre-soak the yarn before we go and set things up. We're going to pre-soak some non-superwash. This is Knit Picks Wool of the Andes worsted weight yarn, in addition to 2 double-stranded sock blanks. These are WOTA Dyepot's platinum sock blanks, but Knit Picks Stroll is very similar and has the exact same yardage. I am going to pre-soak them in some water, but I'm also going to add a splash of white vinegar. I do plan to add some citric acid on top of the ice, so that way we have some acid go down as well for our ice dyeing, but I figured it's not going to hurt anything to have some acid in here already. All right, and now I want to let this pre-soak for at least 30 minutes. We could start this with the yarn dry, but I really want a chance for the yarn to capture those dyes. So we'll wait 30 minutes, it'll probably be longer, and then we'll go outside. Now, unfortunately, even though it's late May, today is gonna be a cool day. I'm still gonna set this up outside, but it's gonna take probably a long time for our ice to melt. Unfortunately, the end of the week and the weekend looks to be even colder and rainier, so I'm taking advantage of not great weather. I should have done this last week, but I didn't have all the ice I needed made. So I have plenty of ice. Let's go outside and start setting up the yarn and everything before we chat more about the colors. Okay, for containers, I'm going to be using I think this was a cat litter tray from Dollar Tree, and this is also a basket from Dollar Tree. And I'm going to start, I think I want to remove as much liquid from the yarns as possible, but I'm not squeezing that hard. We want our yarn to soak up our water. Okay, here are the 2 yarn mops that I'm bringing in. I figured we may as well take advantage of whatever runoff we get and soak up some color. And the reason why we're using non-superwash yarn down here is that if this were superwash, then with acid in there, the color should probably only strike to part of the yarn. And I want more of a chance it's gonna spread. Even though it might sort of pool and stop because I have these containers to raise this basket up. At first, we'll see how things go. Hopefully that's not gonna blow off. We got 1 sock blank, 2 sock blanks. Okay, and I want to arrange these in here. This is gonna be a little tricky. There's a lot of planes today. Okay. It's gonna be sort of scrunched in here, but I don't want it curled like that. I want it more sort of randomly scrunched, almost think like it's being tie-dyed, but I haven't actually tied anything on. Now, I don't know how this would be different if the fabric were straight and flat. That's not something that I really know, and I don't have a lot of experience with that, so if you have any tips, feel free to let me know. But now I need to go get some ice. Now, I made ice cubes by hand for this project. So in that bucket, I have what was 3 gallon size bags full of ice cubes in my freezer. And I feel like each of the gallon size bags had like 6 trays of ice in it. All right, that's probably pretty good. Although I have more ice, and this was all in my chest freezer. So I think what I'm gonna do, it's because I have this ice and I'm not planning on setting up another project today. We can remove these. Actually, oh, I forgot that the yarn is wet. So that's gonna stick, fine. I will put those back in. But if I had any other project today, then I could completely save that ice. But since I put the ice in a non-food safe container, I'm not gonna put that ice back in the freezer. But it's better to have too much than not enough. Oh man. Okay, now I need to go put on my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves. And we're gonna bring out our dyes and, well, I guess we're gonna dye this yarn. Okay, so let's see. I've got Dragon's Heart and Alchemist. Let's start with Alchemist. And I did not re-look at what these colors looked like. So I have no idea if I'm gonna like what they do or not. Okay, I am gonna overlap them a little bit. I know that there are some of the black dyes will break. I don't think I've tried it with ice dyeing. And oh dear, it's a little windy. Okay. That is our Alchemist. Now the thing I don't have today is a yarn mop. So what I'm gonna do is rinse this in some of the water, and ooh, we can see a little bit of that color. It's kind of fun. It's got blues and reds in it and yellows. You can see some of that in there. Now I want my hands to be completely dry before we go into the next color, which is Dragon Heart. I think this is a green-based one. Oh, I hate this. The wind. I am standing upwind of this. Okay, I'm layering them a little bit together. So this isn't going to give us the perfect idea of how each color breaks. Just because, oh, I hate this. The good news is that stuff is sticking to the ice and I'm not seeing a lot of movement within the dye container. But this is why we wear safety equipment. Okay. Add a little bit up there. You get some overlap. Gonna put the lid back on. And let's see. I don't know if I have any water in the bucket, but yeah, this is definitely like way more green than the other color. I love that I'm dyeing my bucket, trying to get the dye off of my fingertips. Oh my goodness. I am really, really excited to see how this is all gonna go down. Okay, but the last thing I need to do is add citric acid. And we're adding citric acid powder because we want the colors to strike. And even though we added some vinegar in with our water to start with, in with our yarn to start with, eventually this water is going to dilute that. So I'm using probably more, and I didn't measure how much I used, but a healthy amount of citric acid, putting some down around the sides. Oh man, and I think we're probably pretty good. The last thing I'm doing is wiping down this top edge just because I see some dye there. But there we go. Now we're gonna have to just wait. And waiting is not a strong suit. So I can tell, less with the green one, but with the Alchemist, I can tell that it'll break with speckling in a really beautiful way, just from what we saw with the powders and a little bit of what I'm seeing on the blank itself right now. You can see little speckles forming down on the edge, but some of the colors that have drifted down below are really nice. Oh, I saw the first drip of water. That made me happy. I can't quite tell if I'm seeing any specklies from the Dragon Heart side. Ooh, drip! Yay! So with any luck, drips like that will strike to the blank, but some of it will go down below onto the other yarn. And I'm dyeing up 2 blanks because that way one of them we can conceivably unravel. But we're gonna have to wait all day now. So let's be patient. This looks so pretty. Now, rather than giving timestamps, I'm gonna say it's 10:50 a.m. I'll try to give just the real time because that way I don't have to keep track of how long it's been since I set this up. Some of this color and breaking that we see already is so beautiful. Oh, so pretty. The last thing I want to say right now is I feel like the white balance isn't doing justice for just how turquoise that's feeling over there. It's feeling very blue-green right now. We do have the green of the basket. Now there are some specks of yellow over there on the teal, but I don't think that that's necessarily breaking within that dragon color. I think that that is more due to the fact that the powder I think was yellowish to start with. So I think that that just hasn't sunk in to any of the ice yet. Look at how pitted some of these cubes are getting right now. Oh my gosh. But anyway, I did set a timer for an hour, but I'll check in when I check in. And let's keep our fingers crossed for some fun results. When you know you have a dye blend that breaks, you have a lot of options of ways that we can play around with this. Color breaking is when you have a dye mixture that separates into the different pigments that are in there, so you see multiple hues in your project. Clearly, I want to dip dye these colors to see if I can capture that breaking like I can with Wilton's Violet Icing color that gives us this really dramatic breaking, because there are different color molecules that bind to yarn at different rates. This may just be about size, where smaller molecules can spread further than larger molecules, but there could be other properties of the pigments that cause them to bind to yarn at different rates. But this is something that I've always enjoyed taking advantage of because it gives really fun colorways in the end. So please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. It's 11:20, and if I weren't worried about potential rain, and if I weren't filming other projects today, then I would have loved to have done a time lapse. It has not been that long yet though, and the surface is looking very, very different. I think a lot of dye has dissolved on the surface of the ice and slid down onto our yarn. We can see areas of saturation peeking through with both the green and the more blue color. It's hard to say if we'll end up seeing dramatic breaking because all I really see so far is mostly one color around the outside, which, to be fair, I suppose like over here I do see areas that are like more green and more blue, so I do see like that kind of breaking, and over here like more navy and then more turquoise. But again, we don't know what's happening like more in the center and beneath the surface as more liquid goes on and things spread, so we have to be patient. And it is worth noting, dyeing wool with acid dyes can behave very differently from dyeing cotton with fiber reactive dyes, in that with the wool, the colors are going to strike a lot faster, and if we were tie-dyeing, the colors would spread more before they set. They take longer to set. Whereas some of these may hit the yarn and strike right away. And so that is one difference that we'd see using the same colors, but different fiber types and different pH, I suppose. But anyway, we'll be back later. It's about noon, and I would say the vast majority of the color is no longer on our ice cubes. What does seem to be left up here are some more of the red tones and some more of the green, less turquoise tones. I mean, with the exception of some areas where powder got on, what I'm seeing is mostly like very blue and very teal in the pinks of the yarn. Hopefully we're seeing some more breaking, but I'm actually kind of impressed that I'm seeing a lot less color than expected down beneath. I think that our yarn is trapping a lot of the color, but again, it's hard to say. There is definitely more dye on here, and we're gonna need to be patient to let things melt. Maybe I would have waited longer before this update, but I noticed a change when I came outside for another project that I have going on right over there. Field trip day. It's 1 o'clock. I'm seeing a lot more yellows on top of the ice. There's a ton of ice left here. I'm seeing we're starting to get some liquid to accumulate down at the bottom. Part of me would lift it up, but I'd probably get dye on my hands, and I don't want to change the pattern of any drips that are happening. I do see some white areas. Man, I really have no idea how this is going to turn out. I think that the water is going to do very little to the sock blanks now, although we do have that last little bit of dye, so who knows. I guess I just have to be patient. It's just going to take so long for it to melt. I mean, it has only been about 2 hours, but it feels like we have so much ice on here still. So, patience, Rebecca. It is almost 4 o'clock, and there is one big change that I feel like I want to point out. Oh, good. We're still above the surface of the water. Oh, that's really cool. Look at this. You can clearly see the like breaking of the pink and blue over on, well, I guess my right, your left. On the other side, I mean, yes, I see, okay, I see like over here a little bit more yellow. That's really cool. I see a lot of dye over on the edge of the pan. We'll have to get that down at some point. Now, we still don't see entirely what's happening here. Ooh, I see a little bit of yellow right there. That's kind of cool. Ooh, I see some notes of, okay, I see some notes of yellow on both of these. Very, very subtle. Now, I'm gonna very carefully, the underside is mostly white. Oh, what's underneath is mostly white. Now, we're still just barely out of the water. There's so much water in there. Oh man, okay. I think that this is what I'm gonna do now. I'm actually gonna briefly set this to the side. Okay, I'm gonna pick up some of this water, which is very, very clear, and I'm gonna sort of bring down this dye that's on the edge, just because I don't want to leave it behind. You can see what I'm doing over here a little better. Is this altering our results? Yes. But are we doing this to leave no dye behind? Also, yes. This means that we can't really make conclusions over what came from which dye, which we can't really do anyway because it was so windy that we don't know what happened, what moved. Oh, it's so cold. It's impressive that a lot of the color is striking given how cold, I mean, now we can see some green things are because there's still ice here down in this area. Okay, that cleaned it a bit and is making me feel really good. Now we can bring this on. I think we are mostly out of the water. Maybe we'll get some pastels on the bottom, but that is the way it is. All right, I'm gonna leave the baster there and zoom in to show you those yellows. So you can see some of those yellows down there. I see some blues and purples and pinks down there. That's cool. We can also see some of the yellows and like a little bit more blue some evidence of some breaking over there. I just think that because the colors are striking faster overall, and maybe I need to do this and not add citric acid on the top. maybe I need to do that at the very end, like at this stage, add the citric acid once most of the dye has dripped down. Maybe then we'd get more coverage. But of course, we'll see what kind of coverage we got eventually. We just gotta wait for everything to melt. It is now 7 p.m. and this would have worked way, way better on a sunny day. Ooh, I do see some really pretty breaking in there. Oh, I am so excited. There's definitely little bits of dye on here, and with the family home, I'm curious how stuck. Yeah, the ice is, this is the problem. When you have like ice and you put it on something wet, it kind of freezes to that and sticks. So I can't really peel the ice off of here easily. But let's check beneath. That looks so cool. I wonder how much, well, is there, it's hard to say if that prevented the color from going there or not. Or, ooh, oh. Okay, I'm gonna leave this still. Moving this showed a lot of color. Okay, we are going to leave this, and I think I'm gonna need to leave it here overnight. I'm a little nervous about rain, but you know what? We're gonna leave it overnight and come back tomorrow, and hopefully I'll beat the rain. I could cover it. Maybe that's what I should do, is I should get a big piece of foil and cover it, but that might blow away. Oh gosh, I don't know. I'm just gonna leave it till morning. The ice should all be gone then. And, you know, we learned about doing this on like a 60-degree day. I mean, most of the dye is on our yarn, and our yarn looks so, so cool. What I just don't know is if any of the color from below is gonna like come onto the yarn. So you know what we should do? Check out that breaking. That is so cool. We're gonna zoom in to memorialize this because we have so many different colors here. I don't know if it's just from Alchemist or if it's from like, could be a combination. But here's another area. This looks awesome. I'm excited to play around with this color by itself. And our dragon, whatever, gives a lot of different green tones. Super pretty. I'm mostly just torn because I don't have a place to put this inside. I don't think I can even carry it with so much liquid in there. So thankfully Keith was like, there's still a tripod outside when he got home from baseball practice. So I was like, oh, I need to go do a check-in. So we're gonna leave things if we end up getting some color on the bottom of this, and I can actually lift up and look and see what's happening. I see a lot of white and a lot of like bright blue on the bottom here. So if we get more color there, that's sort of what's happening, but we have things mostly raised up. So anyway, I think the most exciting thing is that almost all the color is on the sock blanks versus going beneath the surface. And so that's pretty cool. But anyway, I will check in tomorrow morning. You can heat set yarn by the heat of the sun, which we don't have today. We don't have a lot of sunshine. But even if I have things outside and the water is clear, I like to go ahead and add a steaming step just to make sure the colors are well set. In my experience, I've had maybe just one time where a solar dyed project where I left it outside all day in a really hot temperature, it didn't quite get hot enough and some color rinsed out. And so I just blanket add a steaming session on all yarn that I set up cold, just so that way I can be really confident and that the colors are well set. This doesn't mean that there won't be bleeding when we go wash them, but it's gonna give us the best chance of having well set color. It has not started raining yet. I am so lucky, and here we are. This is so cool. I would say that I think that the green side broke similar to how I expected from the photo. I think this side didn't really as much because the pinks and those yellows didn't really spread through the yarn. it's more like they struck as speckles, and so as soon as they hit, they sort of stayed. Whereas I think if this were cotton and there was still water coming on it, they would have spread more, giving us more of that color throughout. But of course, we'll see when we lift up the blanks. And the yellows did the same thing over on this side, but I think that this looks like what was in my head. Don't get me wrong, I think all the colors are fantastic. Before I remove the blanks, we're definitely sitting in water now. You can tell by how much it's dripping. The bottom still looks white to me. I'm not gonna flip that over to show you, but it does look white. I brought my steamer basket out. I'm gonna double check. Yes, we have enough water in there. Now there is a little bit of dye around that edge, and I'll talk about what I'm gonna do about that in a moment. But I'm gonna go ahead without gloves. Ooh, look at that brown. And pick this up. Oh, this is really, okay, that is awesome. The green side is dramatic. We are seeing a little bit more of those browns over there. But overall, the yarn is has a lot of white in it. I'm not pausing too long because I want to get it into the steamer basket. But this is really cool. But you could see just how much white there is. I think that doing this on a non-superwash blank would be a lot of fun. There's a tiny bit of color on my hands, but not so bad. But what I want to do is set those containers aside. I want to dunk those zip ties. And, oh, so we see how the yarn is now. I'm going to lift and move it. Almost all the color is in the yarn. It is very pastel. And then what I'm going to do with this cage, that did not work as well as I thought it would. I was like, oh, I can totally just like submerge it in. But maybe I have to do it this way. And just really kind of go and dunk it. Field trip. Okay, that wasn't very much color that was left on there. I'm not going to leave this out here for very long. This is probably the last time we'll be outside with this project today. I am going to just leave this cage on here, so hopefully it doesn't blow away. Got a tiny bit of color in my hands. It's all good. All right. But I'm going to take this inside and start steam setting it. I just turned it on. If there was a lot of color that felt like it was moving around, I would add more acid onto here now. But I think that the colors aren't really going to move. I mean, maybe the turquoise, but we'll see if we end up seeing a lot of color underneath after I've steamed. I'm going to set the timer for 45 minutes just because the yarn is so cold. It was 50 degrees or so outside right now. It's about 7 a.m. if you are curious. But if I was concerned about color moving around, then I could go and add more acid onto the yarn right now. I just don't think that that's necessary because of the amount of citric acid that I added. I'll see you in about 45 minutes. It's been 45 minutes. This is pretty. There's tons of white. Tons of white and a lot of contrast in the colors here. And again, I think that it would be really fun to do this now with these same colors but on a t-shirt. So I think that that could be really beautiful. Checking the bottom, I don't see any color down there. So I'm gonna set these blanks aside to cool completely and we'll go get those yarn mops. Having moved the yarn in the pan, I see, rather than a white backdrop, I see a hint of some pastel notes on the backdrop of the color. It's very pretty, very pastel. I'm also gonna steam this for 45 minutes, which again, I'm mainly increasing just because things are colder than room temperature. Usually, if I was doing things at room temperature in my house, they'd be a little warmer, so it'll take a little more time for the yarn to warm up. Not a problem. The timer just went off, so I'm gonna turn off the heat and set the yarn aside so it can finish cooling completely so we can wash it. And this yarn is very, very, very wet. Let's wash our sock blanks in the cleaned off container I had been using. They are very pretty. I'm not always the biggest fan of things that are such high contrast, but I think that these will unravel and then can knit up into something really cool. And since these blanks happen to be double-stranded, this tray is not as good of a wash basin as I normally use. There's no bleeding. I'm going to add a little dish soap now. But since each of these blanks are double-stranded, oh no. Am I unraveling both by accident? Oh no, just one. Well, that's probably the one we'll end up unraveling. Since they're both double-stranded, whatever random pattern we have on here, we're going to see that random pattern also translate into 2 matched 50-gram balls of yarn, because wherever we have the blue, white, and green transitions, that's going to happen on both skeins in the same way. Now, thankfully, there's no color bleeding. You know, I don't use fiber reactive dyes as acid dyes very much, mainly because I'm so used to thinking about tie-dye and the massive amount of washing that goes on after, but this all struck to the yarn really, really well using acid. So that is wonderful. And shows that maybe I need to be a little bit less scared of my fiber reactive dyes. And it's not that I'm super scared as much as it is that I don't have as good of a feel for them and the quantities and things as I do with just plain acid dyes. So I'm learning. Now here are our yarn mops that are non-superwash. They've also cooled off completely. And as I quickly wash these, I would like to give a huge shout out and thank you to the ChemKnits Fiber patrons, including Dawn Jans, Karen Siegel, Jessica Parco, Tamara Spanes, Bernadette Crum, and the rest of the names you see on the screen right now. Patreon is a platform that allows people to connect to and support content creators they really enjoy. And there are a lot of fun perks that I offer in return, including shout-outs and videos, behind-the-scenes sneak peeks, a monthly newsletter, and more. Plus, all the ChemKnits patrons vote on the direction for the next month's Dyepot PS video, which is how I am doing this project right now. You can learn more information about the Patreon over at patreon.com/ChemKnits. So patrons, thank you so much for all of your support. Now, it did look to me like a little bit of color came out of this, but things are well set. It could have been a shadow. I'm really happy with this pastel yarn, and the fact that there is so little color in here shows just how much color went on our sock blank. I have a feeling that if I were to do this on a t-shirt, we'd have a lot more color drip through. But again, that's something we're going to need to try another day. So now I will see you soon with all of the finished dry yarn. Our finished blanks look really similar to one another. I'm actually really impressed with that because it has a lot to do with how I had the dyes scrunched up. I'll try to put some pictures up from Dharma's website about these ice dyeing colors. I think this is Dragon's Heart. You can see a lot of the more yellow green, a greener green, and then a turquoise color that spread out. And I think part of this, I think that this is likely turquoise. Turquoise spreads more than other colors anyway. But I think those yellows dissolved later on. And it's not that there was as much and that they spread. It's that if they dissolved later, then maybe that let them travel further. I'm not really sure, but the effect is really cool. Oddly, the Alchemist feels a little less dramatic, which is not what I expected, because I think that the green one from the picture felt like it was more monochromatic, and so I was like, oh, this isn't going to be quite as exciting necessarily, but I find the green one to be very exciting. So here we have almost like a navy with a spread of the turquoise, a little bit less of the turquoise spread, just anecdotally. And then we have the speckles of the pink and the yellow. And this is where I think the fact that we used wool yarn and we use these dyes as acid dyes, we don't see that pink and the more brown color spread quite as much. There is one area where we do have some more brown spread, but this is also closer to where we were overlapping the two colors. So I can't speak for sure about what's happening, but I imagine that on cotton with soda ash, those colors would not strike as quickly and they would spread and bloom a little bit more. But again, I haven't taken a look at the swatch that Dharma provided. Overall, these colors have me really excited. I cannot wait to play around with them with dip dyeing techniques and seeing how they break and doing all sorts of things. And I'm also interested in adding some other ice dyeing colors to my collection. I don't want to have a huge collection of fiber reactive dyes. I just expanded the colors that I had recently, even though I haven't used some of the new colors yet, to include like a green, I think a fuchsia, or a proper red. Just that way I would have the colors needed for a rainbow so I could play around with rainbow tie-dye. Otherwise, I don't have a need for a ton of them, but these dyes are so fun that I'm gonna have to go to the website and see what other colors there are. My only other big thought here is I could have used more dye. I don't know if it's coming across on camera, but the colors almost feel a little bit muted in a way instead of saturated, or almost feel a little faded. And so I think that that just means I should have used more dye. But I was nervous. I was nervous to have way too much dye and have a lot of washing. As I've mentioned, I know there's lots of indie dyers who use fiber reactive dyes as acid dyes, and that's all they use for dyeing their yarn. I haven't done that as much. I've done it a handful of times, but I mostly use them on cottons. And so I'm just so excited and intrigued about how to play around with these more in the future. And I hope you're excited as well. Now I'm going to go unravel this blank that's in front. I'm going to unravel it using my automated skein winder, mainly because I don't have time to do it by hand this time. I will film a short of this process, and I'm hopefully inserting some clips here of what the yarn looks like unraveled. But you can kind of picture how we're going to have variegated white and blue that's going to transition and change and eventually bring in more green as we go down to the other side. You know, there's a lot of interesting dimension in here. A lot more of the brown is showing through now that I'm looking at it close up, and especially when we like spread it apart. I think that there's some potential for some really interesting patterning as we unravel that. This blank is double-stranded, which means it was knit with 2 strands of yarn held together. So when we go ahead and unravel it, these areas where we have these color transitions, like from the more pastel area to the more saturated area, that's going to happen in the same place on both of the strands of yarn. And so if you go and you make socks out of this, you're going to have a matched pair, and it doesn't matter where those random shapes occur on your yarn. Now I feel like with our yarn today, if you were going to go and make 4 socks out of the 450-gram skeins you get from unraveling the yarn, you'd end up with 4 socks that are very similar. These are similar to one another today, but you'll have better matching when you use the pair that was inside one blank. And there are other times where you could dye things up extremely randomly where it might make more of a difference. The 2 yarn mops are really pretty, and you can see our different hues in here. Definitely there are those pink spots that you can see over here. And then we have areas that are more green and more blue, which is less breaking and more just, we had a more blue color and a more green color on there. I think it would be interesting to do the ice dyeing on something non-superwash like this, because in the past when doing this on yarn, that's where you see the color spread further than you do on superwash yarn. But yeah, I don't know how much of the effects you would lose, or if it would end up, I mean, I know this was more immersed in water, if things would end up being more blown out like that. As I unraveled the blank, I forgot to look for obvious dramatic reverse speckling. And clearly there's some, like in there you can see some reverse speckling. I'm sure that there's more within the yarn, and I see some over here, but that could be from just like the way that the colors are transitioning as well. But the effects are still really cool. The last thing that I need to do now is to go and soak our unraveled minis to help set and relax that twist. Relax, not set, but you can see how it's still a little bit wavy. But isn't unraveling footage so satisfying? I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and please subscribe, turn on notifications. It's free and the biggest thing you can do to help support all things ChemKnits. But if you're looking to support the content here on another level, you can go and check out the ChemKnits Patreon, where you get early access to the Dyepot PS series, behind the scenes sneak peeks, and more. I'll have it linked down in the video description, or you can go over to patreon.com/ChemKnits. Now that the weather is starting to warm up, which I say with an asterisk because it is even colder right now than it was when I had set up this ice dyeing earlier this week, but hopefully it'll be warming up soon, and so we can play around more with these dyes outside this summer. Thank you so much for watching.